Hundreds of miles away from the chaos in Washington that is consuming the new GOP House majority, President Joe Biden took a victory lap with an unlikely Republican ally. Laura Barone Lopez has more on the president's trip to Kentucky today.
Eager to showcase his bipartisan bona fides as a 2024 decision looms, President Joe Biden appeared Wednesday alongside Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, a longtime adversary and sometimes friend.
I'm especially happy to be here with my friend and colleague in many years, and I might add, longest-serving leader in the United States Senate, Senator Mitch McConnell.
The Republican, a famed obstructionist during Barack Obama's presidency, joined President Biden in his home state of Kentucky to promote new infrastructure projects.
So today we sit in this wonderful, clear day with sun shining down on literally a legislative miracle.
Standing near the crumbling Brent Spence Bridge that connects Kentucky and Ohio, the duo announced more than $1 billion in federal funds to repair it and help build a new Ohio River bridge.
There are bright spots across the country. The Brent Spence Bridge is one of them. A bridge that continues and connects different centuries, different states, different political parties.
Investments made possible by the $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure law that the White House spent months negotiating with a handful of Senate Republicans. It passed in 2021 after receiving a key blessing from McConnell.
The yeas are 69, the nays are 30.
Despite recently facing a leadership challenge for backing bipartisan legislative deals,
I ran for leader because Republican leaders in the Senate routinely cave in and allow Schumer and Biden to win. It's happening all the time.
McConnell stressed the need to work across the aisle.
I always feel no matter who gets elected, once it's all over, we ought to look for things we can agree on and try to do those, even while we have big differences on other things.
The prior two presidents vowed and failed to fix the Brent Spence, which funnels traffic from two interstate highways.
I've already heard about the bridge. I love the area. We're going to get it fixed.
Frequently doubted, President Biden made clear his love for compromise was here to stay.
Important message to the entire country. We can work together. We can get things done. We can move the nation forward. We just drop a little bit of our egos and focus on what is needed in the country.
As the White House faces a split Congress in Washington, the president, vice president, and senior officials fanned out across states to highlight projects repairing the nation's infrastructure.
So just look at the 95th Street Bridge behind me.
Kicking off a renewed sales strategy that, at least for today, put President Biden and Senator McConnell side by side.
And Laura joins us now. So Laura, this bipartisan trip fresh into the new year, what are Leader McConnell and President Biden trying to signal here?
So both President Biden and Senator McConnell were very explicit about the message that they were sending, not just to voters, but also to their parties. It was all about finding common ground, about being able to work together even if they disagree on issues. McConnell actually said that he thought that it was a good example to be showing the country at this time that the government could work together. And of course, striking contrast to what's happening right now in Washington, D.C. And it's something that that President Biden specifically himself has received a lot of flack for throughout the time that he ran and even into the White House.
Yeah, who benefits politically, do you think?
So this is interesting because I was talking to former Congressman John Yarmuth today of Kentucky, and he said that it's actually President Biden who potentially benefits more because he's up for re-election sooner than McConnell. Here's what he had to say.
I think it actually helps President Biden far more than it helps Mitch McConnell. I think it shows Joe Biden as the person who is really willing to work across party lines and will continue to look for support from Republicans for his agenda.
And that's because of the fact that Senator McConnell isn't up for re-election for a while longer, whereas the 2024 decision is looming for President Biden. And I also spoke to a former GOP senator today who agreed with Yarmuth and said that essentially that this doesn't help McConnell very much because of the fact that, look, he was just facing a leadership challenge. He isn't necessarily great friends with a number of House GOP members, and that now he's made very explicitly clear that he is trying to distance himself, especially since the midterms from President Donald Trump, and that he could potentially be using up a lot of political capital by going and appearing alongside the president to send this message.
Well, we should say the people of Kentucky no doubt benefit from a repaired bridge. You spoke about this, but I remember back during the campaign, then candidate Joe Biden talked about the promise of bipartisanship. He said he could work with any Republican who could work with him, and there were Democrats who said that he was naive. Looking forward, it strikes me that President Biden will have an easier time working with Senate Republicans, potentially more so than House Republicans.
That's right, Jeff. I think that's a good assessment because of the fact that he has a long relationship in the Senate, right? President Biden was a senator for more than 30 years, worked alongside Senator Mitch McConnell then, as well as when he was vice president. And when he was vice president, he was typically the person that was dispatched to the Hill to try to break log jams. He actually, to the dismay of a number of Democrats at the time, worked with McConnell on a deal that extended the Bush tax cuts at the time, the tax credits. He also worked on the debt ceiling with him. But again, we still are talking about Mitch McConnell and the fact that McConnell is well known among Democrats, as you noted, for someone who blocked a number of former President Obama's judges, blocked Merrick Garland in the Supreme Court. McConnell also prides himself and has described himself explicitly as the Grim Reaper, someone who will obstruct the Democratic agenda. But when we're talking about government funding bills and showing that the government can work to get must-pass legislation through the chamber, that's when President Biden could potentially find a greater ally in Senator McConnell. And, one thing that we're looking forward, they could potentially find potential to work across the aisle is on immigration. And so that's something that the White House has already said, called on Republicans to work with them on, especially since Republicans are trying to pressure the president on the border. And President Biden said today, as he was leaving Kentucky, that he has the intention of going to the border as early as next week ahead of the U.S.-Mexico summit.
Laura Barone Lopez, thanks as always for that great reporting.
Thank you.